Welcome, new Templars. I'm 𝕯�𝖚𝖚, aka A145, the Map Maker. Got a current events update for you guys for this week, the week that started with May the 4th, the big Star Wars holiday. And I sort of delayed this video a little bit because there wasn't too much happening in the beginning of the week, and then we wanted to really see what came out of this UFO file disclosure drop that just dropped today. And just to preface it, it's a little bit of a nothing burger, but at the same time, we have a few minor wins to celebrate. We're slowly bringing the NPCs along the UFO education journey, and it really is one baby step at a time. But to see the White House posting even a video of a glowing white dot moving through the sky, stopping, changing directions, is a step forward. So of course, everyone who's been in this movement in ufology for years was hoping for a lot more. But to see some of these things, moving from UFO conferences and YouTube and, esoteric circles to the White House Twitter account, it is kind of a big deal. Even if the videos they actually released are not that big of a deal. Of course, there's nothing close up. It's literally things you can walk out any night and see in the sky, especially if you have a giant laser like I do. You can see what we like to call light ships that are either moving or changing directions. So it's like these things, to see them on the video from the Pentagon is not that exciting. We were hoping for close-ups. We were hoping for alien bodies. We were hoping for a press conference with Lord Ashtar or Trump introducing a mantid. And that didn't happen. They're really kind of taking like a stand-back approach to this, with Trump's actual tweet saying something like, you can see for yourself what the hell is going on. It's like, you guys do the research. We're not even going to present this in any way. That wasn't like a press conference presentation. It was just like a file drop like we had with the Epstein, like we had with the JFK. But we're like very slowly moving the dial forward. And this is a very sensitive topic, I'm not going to lie. The reason why being this will shatter people's entire conception of the universe, specifically the Abrahamic religions. And there was mainstream stories on Drudge Report this week talking about, we'll pull up a picture here. I believe this was actually the picture on Drudge Report, which I found these stories fairly entertaining. But it was talking about how the Trump administration had met with pastors to brief them that this disclosure may be coming. And, we don't know the exact contents of what they told the pastors, how to interpret this new information or how to preach it to their congregations. But there is concern for like the breakdown of psyche, social order, religious conception. In a way, these religions serve a purpose of creating a common moral foundation of society, so that, people don't just want to obey the law of the government to not kill, cheat, steal, but, we're obeying the 10 Commandments, which I think is something important in society. And, if you pull the rug out from that, people may become unhinged. And so this is something that needs to be dealt with sensitively. And, there's also the potential of, if we do disclose ETs in some way, it becoming like a new cargo cult, a new religion, that people start worshiping these ETs, depending on which species they disclose first. But so far, we're only getting glowing dot light ship disclosures. But, that's at least a step, because, some of those light ships, they may actually be the good guys. And we're still pretty far away from seeing mainstream disclosure of like the reptilians and the bad guys that we know about. Got, of course, Melania wearing the snake pumps to meet King Charles. There's a little hint at that. But we're kind of still a long way from a full-on like pantheon of ET species, being released as like a family tree by the Pentagon. But that was sort of the story that we were really waiting for this week. But there's plenty of other things happening, from the redistricting war, which is a consequence of the Supreme Court case, and the attempt to redistrict Democrat in Virginia. A big MAGA bloodbath across, well, I don't like to call it a bloodbath, but a red wave across the country. We'll pull up this picture here. A red wave across the country in the primaries. And I'm not sure which other types of elections. We have a list here of the different wins related to elections this week. But, despite the press saying that Trump is at a very low popularity rating, it would seem from the primaries that Trump-endorsed candidates are more popular than either Democrats or rhinos primarily across the nation. And so I'm not sure if the popularity ratings that the media is saying are true or not. Certainly a lot of people are feeling the pressure from the oil prices currently, the lack of golden age, which I'm also going to talk about in this video, the golden age of unemployment when we were promised a regular golden age. But even with that being the case, most people know that the Democrats and the rhinos are no better than these MAGA politicians. And I think most people are still trusting Trump's endorsements, despite what's going on with Iran and the price of oil. So, popularity may not always be the best indicator of where things are going in the future. And I think Trump is making some, this was his second term, so he doesn't have to worry about winning another election, and the first year of his second term. So it's like, I think the first year of the second term, well, actually, we're getting into the second year, but this is really like the best time to get some unpopular things done, that may be building for the future, but perceived the wrong way in the present, taking basically the slings and arrows in the present to get things that really were neglected for decades done, such as disarming terrorist states, funding terrorism throughout the world, and to get them done, even though they may not be the most popular thing to do, it needed to get done. And so hopefully we're moving past that phase soon. And I have a small update on Iran here that, we can move on to better things, bigger disclosures, the new Earth mentality. However, we're also faced with a sort of trifecta of other threats in the form of a new virus this week, talking about the Hantavirus, which apparently a bunch of people on a cruise ship going from South America to Europe became infected with. And now they have been disseminating those people throughout the world. It seems to be spreading a little bit. Obviously, major fears about this being an attempt at a new coronavirus type situation worldwide. Hopefully it does not get to that stage, but that may be what the deep state is trying to attempt. So we're going to talk about that, the UFO file release, and I'm going to wrap up this video with a little bit critique of the Met Gala. As you guys may know, I used to be in fashion design myself. I still have some friends that actually worked on a few celebrity looks for that Met Gala, but I'm going to offer some little criticism of the Met Gala and the fits that we saw there. So that is sort of the overview of the video. And so first, and let's get Iran out of the way. You guys may or may not have seen this, but there was this post floating around Twitter. It looks like it may have come from 4chan or whatever it is now, 8chan. But it seems to be someone like claiming to have some, I'm not sure if they're saying it's a theory or insider information on Iran, but essentially it's saying here that Iran is not an insolvent pariah state. Iran is a primary source of unhedged liquidity for the shadow banking system. London is the hub, Tehran is the offshore battery. IRGC energy credits are not sold, they're swapped for Vostro credits in mid-tier Omani banks. These credits get bundled into collateralized synthetic obligations. They hit London repo desks as high-quality collateral to back short-term loans. Without this 24/7 inflow of dark energy-backed paper, the City of London's leverage ratios collapse. The 2026 Iran war is based on two factions of the global elite fighting one another. Their fight has gone from the boardrooms to kinetic events, which can also be seen via other seemingly unconnected accidents in the form of private transport crashes and security lapses for world leaders. Faction A is the old money central bankers. They aim to keep the Iran loop open at all costs, They know the Western debt to GDP ratio is terminal. They use the shadow trade to suppress domestic inflation and keep the repo market from seizing. To them, a nuclear deal is just a legal patch to keep the detergent flowing. Faction B is the Silicon Valley neo-feudalists. They aim for kinetic escalation and regime change. They want to force a global default and a great reset to move everybody onto a fully CBDC-tracked ledger. They attack the Iran loop because it is untracked and gives old money a way to survive without their tech. So they're saying here, there is no blockade, it's monopoly. The sanctions are not walls, they're tolls. They create a compliance tax that ensures that only 5 biggest banks can handle the volume. Seizing the central bank of Iran is about deleting the last off-grid gold reserves. If the Iran loop breaks, London will take a 30% liquidity haircut within 48 hours, which one may see via a shift in the gold to oil ratio. Escalation will continue, escalation will probably involve cutting subsea cables. The system is cannibalizing its own infrastructure to stay alive. So I had seen that on Twitter. Like I said, it probably came from 8chan or 4chan. I actually heard Nino Rodriguez read that to 𝕯𝖚𝖚𝖚. I'm not sure if that video was on a private one or YouTube, but Nino read that to 𝕯𝖚𝖚𝖚, and 𝕯𝖚𝖚𝖚 said, yeah, that's pretty much what's happening. And that sort of flushes out theories that I've been presenting since this war started, that, you know, this is related to Iran's connections to European big bankers and nobility, and specifically London and the city of London and, you know, their banking monopoly. So, and Lloyd's of London and the insuring of the ships through the strait. So it's all connected. And so I felt like that just kind of flushed it out a little bit more. We've had a few in the past 48 hours, a few little skirmishes between the US and Iran. You know, it's not completely over yet, but it's seeming like, you know, the administration may want to move on in some ways. In other ways, you know, we have a huge buildup of military forces in there, and they're requesting, you know, the 1.5 trillion for, you know, next financial year. And so, you know, in those ways, it does financially in terms of ordering weapons and asking for, you know, Ford and these other American car manufacturers to activate the Defense Production Act to make weapons and tanks. It's like, clearly they seem to be planning for a bigger, wider war, which, you know, a lot of us who were America First and MAGA, like, don't necessarily support. And I'm still a little bit concerned of, you know, even despite believing in the Q operation, like, if the military is in control, if we are in continuity of government with like a military government staging a lot of the civil government actions that we're seeing, I'm a little bit concerned of like the military industrial complex and like these endless wars continuing, despite that being like a campaign promise of Trump to like end the endless wars and stop World War III. It seems like they're pretty much planning for World War III. But so hopefully that gets turned around. Hopefully Iran gets resolved soon, and we can get on to bigger and better things for America's 250 instead of just, you know, $7, $11 gas prices. So a little more into a few critiques of what's going on and the administration in a minute here. But let's first celebrate the victory. The red wave, the many, many rhinos that got primaried this week in the primary elections that took place across the country, with people drawing the conclusion that MAGA is stronger than ever. Have this picture of, let's see, all these different wins. Now, I know in Ohio, the big vote was for Ohio governor. Okay, I'm seeing, yeah, they're saying like these are for a lot of like House of Representative seats that have been won for essentially like pro-MAGA, non-rhino candidates. I'm not going to go into all of them, but big wins in Indiana, Ohio. This is all Indiana, Ohio. Heard there was big wins in Indiana and Ohio. And of course, Vivek Ramaswamy for governor in Ohio. He has the candidate elected for the Republican Party in the primaries. So to me, that seems like pretty well of a guarantee that he is going to be the governor in the main governor election. in September, or what, November rather, because Ohio is definitely leaning red the past several years, and I just don't see us electing like a female Democrat governor in Ohio at this time. So it seems like Vivek may be a shoo-in, and I actually didn't vote in this primary. I mean, I probably should have, but I was kind of on the fence because I'm like, I'm not like just racist against like Indians, but I kind of feel like Ohio, like being Midwest, like I'm not sure why we have to have like an Indian candidate. I haven't followed all his points, but I do support his point about abolishing property tax. So I was kind of like okay if he won or okay if he didn't win, you know what I mean? So I'm actually looking forward to possibly Vivek being governor and abolishing property tax. That would be very nice for my own finances and my own situation of having inherited this house 2 years ago, realizing the property taxes are like as high as a luxury apartment. So looking forward to that. Here's Vivek winning Ohio. Other wins, I have two lists here of different wins. One composed by Scott Pressler, one composed by Benny Johnson. That they may overlap. They may overlap a little bit, but there was big red wins in Tennessee as well. So you guys may have been following. 2 weeks ago, Virginia had a vote to redistrict their state, which had all these gerrymandered districts extending out from the Washington, D.C. area, taking away many Republican seats, turning those seats Democrat. Well, just yesterday, I believe, their Supreme Court struck down that attempt at gerrymandering. So they're going to have to go back to the drawing board to redraw their districts. At the same time, many Republican states have taken the impetus to do their own redistricting to gerrymandering, also based on the Supreme Court decision striking down race-based congressional districts. And so we've started to see some states actually implementing the desegregated or like deracialized voting districts, starting with Tennessee. The Tennessee House officially passed the new congressional maps that will eliminate the state's only Democrat black majority district. As expected, the Democrats in the chamber started screaming and melting down. Some may call it even chimping out. So that's the first of, I think, many. We're expecting actually many other districts in the South, once these race-based districts are abolished, to redistrict in ways that will add more Republican seats. So in a list here of all the wins in terms of voting and redistricting this week, Indiana State Senate Republicans. Oh, the squishy state Senate, that means the rhinos. So actually in Indiana, rhino Republicans who were endorsed by Mike Pence were defeated by MAGA Republicans endorsed by Trump. Tennessee redrew its congressional maps. Florida redrew its congressional maps. Texas redrew congressional maps. That's adding 5 Republican seats. Florida was adding 4 Republican seats. Tennessee was adding 1 Republican seat. So just those 3 states alone, that's adding 10 Republican seats in the House of Representatives. SCOTUS approved the Texas map. SCOTUS ruled that maps based on skin color are unconstitutional. That was last week. Louisiana must redraw its congressional map, so that one's coming down the pipe. Even more House seats for Republicans. And like I said, the Virginia Supreme Court struck down their unconstitutional referendum, making more Democrat districts. And so just another version of this. I should have cross-referenced these lists and combined them. But once again, Indiana was a rhino bloodbath. SCOTUS ruled against racist maps. Democrats lose racist DEI seats en masse. New GOP seats in Florida, Tennessee, Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi, Missouri, South Carolina. The Dems' rigged map in Virginia was tossed out. The Virginia Senate leader raided by FBI. Somali fraudsters have been raided by FBI. Now, this is getting into beyond just like congressional or like beyond the vote wins. This is into getting into other wins for the Trump administration. Somali fraudsters have been raided. This is like also wins for the FBI, making progress with our DOJ as well, with the new DOJ leader, the Attorney General. One of Fauci's scientists, aides, was arrested and indicted. Comey indicted again. ActBlue under investigation. SBLC indicted. Hate hoax exposed. John Brennan under investigation. Fannie Willis under investigation. J6 liar. This is getting into a little too much stuff, but you guys get the point. Like, we are seeing wins for both justice and for MAGA Republicans. But they're seeing, for all the fluff and all the positive talk we can talk about, there are still major concerns. And even I have concerns. Like, I've been feeling just not trusting the plan, but definitely fatigue, especially having been to the gas station and paid the most I ever paid for gas, I think, in my life, which was like $75. And this is in Ohio, mind you. I'm sure the price is sky higher over in California. But before we get to some of those criticisms, I did want to read something related to what the Supreme Court struck down about those race-based voting districts. So essentially, those race-based voting districts came into existence based on the 1965 Voting Rights Act. And so this dates back to the Lyndon B. Johnson era. So essentially, Kennedy was killed, who was a very popular president, doing a lot of things that people liked for the country. And then Lyndon B. Johnson comes in, and we have the Civil Rights Movement, we have the Voting Rights Act, and a lot of these things that sort of set the stage for where we are today with this sort of like weaponized racial relations in this country, alongside a sort of spiraling and parasitic assistance program. You know, we have the Section 8, we have the food stamps. A lot of that was exposed with the Doge cuts, but you know, we have this class of people that have essentially no motivation to ever become independent and detached from you know, being dependent on the system. Essentially, they're like a drain on the productive taxpayers of this country. And it all started, you know, with the assassination of JFK. You know, we see all these connections to Trump and JFK, and it seems like his administration wanting to go back to some of those policies from before Lyndon B. Johnson and the Democrats started really screwing up this country on a fundamental level. So just taking us back to 1965 for a minute, what they actually did, what has been reversed since last week, was the Voting Rights Act districts, often referred to as majority-minority districts, are electoral districts drawn to ensure racial or language minority groups constitute a majority of the population, enabling them to elect candidates of their choice, mandated by Section 2 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. These districts prevent voter dilution, where minority voting power is dispersed, and encourage compliance with anti-discrimination laws. And by the way, it was also the use of, I think, was it the Insurrection Act, to actually enforce desegregation. So it's like, this is when America really changed. And, you know, I'm not saying I want to go back to Jim Crow necessarily or back to segregation. But clearly, you know, some of these ideas that were put forward back then of like universal equality among all hominids, like, have not worked out very well. So usage, examples, and key details of the 1965 Voting Rights Act was that the purpose was that it was designed to prevent systemic dilution of the voting strength of minority groups, particularly in areas with racially polarized voting. The legal basis for Section 2 of the VRA prohibits any voting practice that results in the denial or abridgment of the right to vote on account of race, color, or language minority status. Frequency. As of post-2020 census data, there are roughly 148 U.S. House majority minority districts. Well, that's a big number. 148 people are in the House of Representatives based on these racially drawn districts. And of course, you guys probably know that the African American population of the US is only at about 12%. So it seems that this Voting Rights Act had, skewed things towards the Democrats for a very long time, giving the Democrats a much bigger representation in Congress than, naturally drawn districts would allow. And the Democrats have been very keen on gerrymandering for the past, 50 years probably. I've seen there's literally 0 Republican House districts in all of New England. So, meanwhile, they're doing that in these Democrat-controlled states. In other Republican states, they're drawing up even more districts based on these minorities, which, you're not supposed to. The whole Supreme Court decision was that you can't draw districts is essentially racial discrimination to say, just draw this district around, where they've, essentially herded all these poor black people into, essentially. These districts are often used in state and federal redistricting to ensure minority communities can elect their preferred candidates, such as in southern states with high Black or Latino populations. Effective districts, opportunity districts, districts where a minority group has a realistic chance to elect their candidate of choice, even if they are not in a strict 50% majority. And so just to finish this off, the recent development as of April 26 is that the U.S. Supreme Court has recently emphasized limits on these districts, ruling that the VRA cannot be used to require additional majority-minority districts if a state's plan already complies with the law, as seen in 𝕯𝖚𝖚 versus Louisiana. So I think that's a very good thing that's changing. This will probably eliminate people like 𝕯𝖚𝖚 𝖚𝖚 and that other man that always interrupts Trump's State of the Union addresses. And so it's I think, the country is slowly healing and rebalancing back to, what's actually the will of the people and not the will of the courts and these rigged, gerrymandered districts. I think, I'm not sure if you just I'm not saying you should just draw a grid over the state and that's exactly what the district should be. But what I'm saying is that the Democrats have really skewed this a lot over the past 50 years to get, you're seeing there 148 seats based on this racially motivated district drawing. And so, just it's looking a lot better for the midterms is all I'm going to say. Despite the Iran war being unpopular, we're looking at the Democrats losing a lot of House members here. So I would say that's a good thing, because I think, still, despite having some concerns about, the Trump administration and the military-industrial complex, I would say their policy position is still light years better than the Democrats and the rhinos. However, to begin offering a few little criticisms here, if anyone from the Trump administration is watching, you have Trump publicly making a fairly big deal about, showing off that he's going to have this UFC fight on the White House lawn for the America's 250th anniversary. You saw this dramatic scene this week of the entire presidential motorcade driving onto the reflecting pool in the National Mall for Trump to inspect the color that he's having this thing painted to see if he likes the American flag blue or not. And I believe it was while they were on in the in I don't even know how they drove in the reflecting pool. Like, isn't there like an edge, like a curb? And is this thing designed to support vehicles? I guess it is. But one of the reporters, probably from ABC, while they were in the reflecting pool, asked Trump, why he's like taking so much time on like aesthetics when gas prices are what they are. People are suffering from gas prices. And the thing is, it's not just gas prices. Like, the price of energy affects everything. The price of energy is affecting food. The price of energy is affecting insurance rates, house prices. It's like all the cost of goods is affected by energy costs, because that's the cost of transporting them. And in a lot of ways, the cost of producing them as well. Because, the gas is what's used to create the electricity. And so the price of energy is choking everyone. Like, we're feeling this cost of living crisis. We're having record low consumer sentiment. And so I have several articles here about like what's going on. Now, this picture is obviously sort of like a derogatory joke about it. And we actually did just see the S&P 500 hit a record high this week. So, he's not exactly ruining the stock market. The stock market is holding fairly steady, at least it's, well, apparently from also what I've read, it's like only a small handful of big tech stocks are actually what's propping up the entire stock market. So some people are saying that this could be kind of like a big bubble stock market. And we're continuing to see, major signs of stress in the industry, also caused by the replacement of workforce by AI across several different sectors, with major companies doing big layoffs. And so the big one this week that was announced was Coinbase, which, used to be, I would say, my favorite crypto exchange. I noticed over time that their fees seem to be getting higher and higher and less upfront. And so personally, I have moved to Kraken when I want to do crypto transactions, either transferring crypto back to fiat and moving it to my bank account, or even buying more crypto, which I haven't done in quite a long time. But yeah, I've pretty much abandoned Coinbase. But either way, so the news was that Coinbase was letting off 14% of their staff to be replaced with AI. That was about 700 individuals out of a staff of 5,000. And this tweet was saying that, now I'm not sure if this happened before or after the layoffs, but that Coinbase posted nearly 400 million in losses as Q1 revenue dropped 31% to 1.41 billion amid a prolonged crypto bear market. So yeah, when we're in a bear market for crypto, people aren't doing transactions on Coinbase, which means they can't collect their exorbitant transaction fees. So, in other golden age of unemployment news, PayPal announced they will be cutting 20% of their workforce over the next 2 to 3 years. Beef prices are at a record high. In the beef industry, the big four processors control 85% of the beef processing market. Blanche said at a press conference on Monday, multiple plant closures across the country and current market structure and high concentration in the industry indicate anti-competitive activity. So it sounds like the DOJ may be looking into a beef monopoly. But either way, I think that all of that kind of goes back to the cost of energy. Now, as it's getting darker here, I'm going to turn up my light a little bit. Now, you guys also probably heard about Spirit Airlines shut down, what seemed to be like a very abrupt shutdown. Like, people were essentially like stranded like while they were on vacation. I was kind of surprised that it wasn't more of like a gradual shutdown, like stop selling tickets, like let people actually get home from their trips and then shut it down. But it seemed like it was kind of like a hard stop. So Spirit Airlines was shut down based on the cost of fuel spiraling upward. And it's also been announced that JetBlue may be just weeks away from shutting down as well. Also announced this week was that foreclosure filings jumped to a 6-year high. as rising property taxes and insurance costs and debt strain U.S. homeowners, as per the Wall Street Journal. And on top of the Coinbase news that I already read, just yesterday, Coinbase was frozen, essentially. The whole website went down for 5 hours or more. And today it's been announced that the reason for that was Amazon Web Services room had overheated somewhere. So strange things happening. Despite, and then, I see a post like on the White House Twitter saying like record number of jobs added. So I have read that they're adding crypto jobs at big banks like JP Morgan and like BlackRock. So, some companies may be adding jobs. Obviously, like BlackRock's doing fine. Well, who knows? Maybe BlackRock's insolvent too, but they're adding crypto jobs. But yeah, it's like, we voted, like my main thing voting for Trump was economic, because like it's like I gotta survive here, you know what I mean? And when the economy is doing bad, like I don't get orders. And when energy costs is up, it's just everyone is feeling this strain. And from what I've heard on some of the people I listen to, like it's not just in the USA, it's like internationally. There's like essentially a cost of living crisis going on across the whole world. And so, a lot of Americans voted for Trump was like their number one issue, at least mine was to turn that around, like make it possible to just live in this country, make it so that like we can have vacations again, so that we're not just like scrambling to like barely survive. And, that's what we were hoping for to happen like immediately when he got into office. And, some of the Doge cuts looked promising halfway through the first year, but now we're like starting this Iran war, literally driving up energy costs. Like, what is the point of being energy independent and drill baby drill if we're gonna like start all this shit in Iran? And it drives up definitely energy costs for the countries that get oil from Iran, but this is definitely coming back home and having some blowback on the domestic market. And if we're saying like, oh well, like come buy oil from the USA, it's like, well, that means there's going to be less oil for Americans, and it's going to drive up the cost for Americans as well. And so I'm not sure about this plan, but some of these things are definitely long-term planning, like definitely like the tariffs and building more American factories is definitely a strategy that can, enhance the American workforce and the American economy and our import to export ratio. So I do see some long-term strategy things happening here, but in general, I was hoping it would be less of like a few steps back before a few steps forward. And, what can I say? It's like people are feeling the crunch. It's like not much fun to live anywhere anymore when you're just like literally working to survive and pay your bills. And, a lot of people, a lot of younger Americans like feel like they can't have children because they can't even afford for one person to live, never mind having additional children with like the cost of childcare and all this stuff. So it's like really need to kick off that real like hardcore part of the golden age, like any time now would be nice. And so it's causing a lot of people stress. And just personally, like, so you guys may have read in my newsletter, I'm looking to relocate the warehouse for D.S.M.P. And it was like the main objective was like safety and climate control, but like another rationale for that was to potentially get like something cheaper. And it's like so slim pickings. Like the whole commercial real estate is majorly like not designed for small businesses. It's nearly impossible to even find warehouse space that's like 1,000 square feet or under. And then finding anything that's like less than what I'm already paying is also a challenge. And it's like I'm finding some locations where, like for one example on LoopNet, it said that it was $800 a square feet, and I get there, or sorry, $800 a month. And I get there and they're like, oh no, actually now it's $1,200 a month. Like that price was out of date. And it's like, that's a pretty big increase, you know, for like what is listed as versus like what the price is when you arrive there. And so I'm not sure where we're going to move yet. I've put in my 60-day notice. It may actually, we have to move the business back to this house if we can make room for it somewhere. You know, I don't want to clutter up the living room with a bunch of posters and like giant shelving units, but it's like slim pickings out there. And then, you know, we've seen some locations where there's like similar danger issues, I would say, of like stuff like we have going on where we are now, in terms of parking and crime. And so ready for that golden age to hit any time now, DJT. You know, think about like regular Americans, not just your billionaire donors, with some of these policy decisions. So a little more transitioning now into like the bigger emergency news and some kinetic news. There was actually an attempt to murder J.D. Vance this week when a deranged leftist Democrat opened fire on his motorcade. This barely got any media attention, and it's just kind of demonstrating how numb we are now at this point to these Democrats' attempts of violence towards the Trump administration. It's like it's getting to be like a once a week thing that there's like some kind of assassination attempt. In other kinetic news, and I found this quite interesting. I'm surprised this isn't a bigger story, or like seeing where this is going. But it was announced that Obama's housekeeper was found dead in their house in DC, apparently while both Barack and Michelle were home. So Obama's housekeeper's death is being investigated for possibly foul play, and some suspect there might be a love triangle involved. The DC Metropolitan Police are reportedly undertaking an all-hands-on-deck investigation of the suspicious Sunday morning death of longtime housekeeper of Barack and Michelle Obama, the cause of which has still not been made public, at their DC, Washington residence. A police department source has now revealed that they are probing the possibility of foul play being involved in the sudden death of the housekeeper, who was revealed to be a male in his mid-30s. It's kind of repeating itself actually here. That's basically the story. And, you know, they had that other chef, right, that drowned in the pond that they have in Martha's Vineyard, was it? So Obama's seem to be competing with the Clintons' trail of death that they leave behind them, and people close to them dying mysteriously. And so, you know, I don't see this necessarily being the thing that like brings down the Obamas, but it certainly is concerning. And I think the Obamas have a lot of other things to worry about at the same time. So hopefully we see some justice. Now, let's see, 107 was talking about some of this. Of course, it keeps getting put off. I was hoping we would see justice for these big players before the 250, the big 250 celebration. That's supposed to be a year-long, you know, festival. It's not much of a festival yet, to be honest. So, what Juan was saying, like we may see, you know, some arrests starting to happen before then, but then like the bigger arrests going into the fall. So again, you know, pushing the goalposts down the road. But I mean, I still see so many signs that I am confident this is going to happen eventually. I mean, I think that some of these people are already gone. It's just the public disclosure of it, and mitigating the blowback and the fallout. You know, we certainly still have many leftists suffering TDS that like an Obama arrest could definitely send them right over the edge. But we'll just have to continue to be patient, meditate, and, you know, pray for the optimal timeline of that to pan out when it does. So before we get any further, I want to throw in a quick little promo here for dsmp.io, the store that keeps the new Templars running. And I have listed some new crystals this week. I actually finished listing all the crystals I photo shoot from my personal collection, which are now up there. We still have several of the big crystals from Tucson from last year, so check those out. In terms of artwork, we still have the Sovereignty Certificate is our newest one, which we have as this size, the big poster and the mini poster. And both of those come with supplementary information that expands on what's in the actual diagram with more sovereignty strategies for you guys to pursue. World Hierarchy Pyramid, Cult of Baal, we've got it all in all formats: tapestries, posters, small prints, packets. You get a special group deal on the packets. So explore the whole website and check out this brief 1 minute 7 second promo.
Are you tired of the lies? It's time to wake up and fight back with truth you can see, touch, and feel. At dsmp.io, we don't just sell merch, we arm the awakening. Grab original artwork that hits like a red pill to the soul. Slap up infographic posters that expose what they don't want you to know. Arm yourself with packets of intel that turn civilians into warriors. Transform your walls with massive tapestries and razor-sharp prints. Download the truth instantly from anywhere in the world with digital downloads you can print anywhere. Supercharge your energy with powerful crystals and holistic body products that keep your vessel unbreakable. Everything we offer is forged for the front lines of consciousness. In the chaos of today, we give you the tools to stay sharp and to stay awakened. This is more than shopping. This is a movement. Discover the truth and join the awakening.
Map the truth and set your mind free.
The deep state is our #1 enemy.
Buy some art, let the red pill flow.
At dsmp.io.
So dsmp.io. Let's get the color corrected here. There we go. We've got it all at dsmp.io, and I'm wearing all dsmp.io. This is a Energy Map t-shirt, light code pendant, DSMP hat. We've got it all, and I am actually working on a new artwork. It's top secret, but it is coming down the pipe eventually. And in the meantime, check out all the other ones we offer, especially Deity Chart, Infinite Life Vortex fold-out packet. We've got it all. And actually, I have been working this week on designing a few new t-shirts, which I just ordered a sample of one of them. And I have several other t-shirt ideas I want to actually develop. But unfortunately, this warehouse move has been really taking up a lot of my time looking on LoopNet and Property Shark, trying to find somewhere to move the actual business to. So, and that's going to be a lot of work to move all those posters as well. But that is the plan, is to find a better location as our headquarters, somewhere we can be for a long term. So dsmp.io, and once again, like, subscribe on the video, and sign up for the newsletter to be up to date on all of our announcements. So let's get into the trifecta of chaos here that we see unfolding in the world. Trifecta of alien invasion, virus pandemic. And now this infographic says AI cyber attack. I haven't really heard much about that, like being talked about. I've heard that as like a theory of something, coming down the pipe from the cabal in the future, but I haven't heard much discussion of it recently. I've heard more discussion recently of a bond crisis, and so that may be like the financial element here, but seems to be a lot on the plate, and I think a lot of people are feeling overwhelmed, and especially that we're already under like high energy prices, a lot of financial pressure. The idea of having another pandemic when we're already having high oil prices is a little bit overwhelming to me, actually, to think about. And who knows what an alien announcement or alien invasion would do, in terms of finances in the economy. But a lot of people are noting that it just seems to be a lot on the plate at the moment. And so like, here's another tweet of someone saying, so we're doing World War III, interdimensional aliens, and a rat virus now. Nice. And this one, no, this like a lot of people are having a similar sentiment here. This one's saying, I'm sorry, like some of this is getting like cut off a little bit in the thumbnail here, but this one is saying it almost feels like they're throwing everything at us at once. A new virus, ticks, aliens, chemtrails, fear porn is hitting max capacity. Believe nothing. I found a tick on myself like 3 days ago, and I had to have help to like dig it out yesterday, which took like 30 minutes. So hopefully I don't have like Lyme disease or like whatever else they've been putting in these ticks. Like there are still just regular ticks out there. So hopefully that's what I had in me. And then we have this meme that was pretty funny, I thought, which is you know, the guy walking down the street all nonchalant, how 2026 is going so far. You have aliens, Hantavirus, World War III, AI data centers, gas prices, kill switches, energy lockdowns. It is getting harder to stay optimistic these days. But at the same time, while there's definitely concerns, especially if you are overly invested or like look at the news all day long, there's also things to be celebrating. There's wins to be celebrating. And, you know, in general, like we are surviving. Like even though things may be tight, there may be a lot of pressure. You know, I think most people are making adjustments to make it work, even if that means fewer vacations, less spending money. Personally, for me, like it's like less partying, more just focusing on like being locked in, as they say. But it's like, how locked in can we get? Like when it just feels like the whole system is collapsing. You know what I mean? It's like you can only be so locked in during a systemic collapse. And so we're just all trying to hang in there, basically. And so, like, the big story this week in terms of the biological warfare, you know, pandemic, whether it is biological warfare or not, is this Hantavirus, which is said to have originated on the Dutch ship M.V. Hondius, which was carrying 150 people and stopped off the coast of Cape Verde when it became clear that there was a virus spreading on the ship, and a few people had actually died. 3 had died and 8 were sick. So the World Health Organization warned that the disease may have spread between passengers aboard the luxury cruise. One case was reported in Switzerland. Passengers have disembarked since in Holland, and a lot of them returned to their countries. Now, why were they not quarantined for this virus has an 8-week incubation period? So that's pretty serious. And, you know, it may have been like there's people from all different countries on this ship. So it may have been like a legal nightmare to try to actually quarantine them in any one country. It's like who actually had jurisdiction over these people. And it was probably like a fight between several different embassies about what to do with these people. But either way, you know, what is the point of things like the World Health Organization if they can't efficiently manage a ship of like infected people with a virus that may cause a worldwide catastrophe? We have this little infographic showing essentially the timeline of this ship from April 1st, leaving Ushala from Argentina, the tiny tip down there of South America, and sort of traveling north up the Atlantic and then stopping around here. Let's see. Let's go through the whole timeline. April 11th, the first passenger died when they were like in the middle of the Southern Atlantic. April 25th, wife of deceased passenger is flown from St. Helena to Johannesburg, South Africa. April 26th, the woman died in South Africa, Johannesburg. And April 27th, sick man flown to hospital. May 3rd, ship arrives at Cape Verde. May 2nd, another passenger dies on the ship. May 6th, the ship is now heading toward the Canary Islands. And also May 6th, 3, including Brit, evacuated to the Netherlands, another treated in Zurich, and a French case. So containment strategy was like a total failure, essentially. What is Hantavirus? It's a bug with a 40% mortality rate, and it has reached Europe. The deadly virus that ripped through the Dutch cruise ship MV Hondius, killing 3, is usually transmitted via contact with rodent droppings, but this particular strain, known as the Andes virus, is an alarming exception. As for the passengers still on the luxury vessel, they could face a quarantine of up to 2 months, experts have warned, as the virus has an incubation period of 8 weeks. Symptoms range from mild flu-like illness to major respiratory issues or internal bleeding. Although uncommon, limited human-to-human transmission has been reported in previous outbreaks of the Andes virus, a specific species of hantavirus. The strain is found largely in Chile and Argentina, where a cruise ship started in March. It is the only known variant that can spread through close, prolonged human-to-human contact. The WHO confirmed on Wednesday that the outbreak on the cruise ship is the Andes hantavirus. So where is this going? Does this have the potential to be like another COVID pandemic? Nobody knows quite yet. Hopefully it just fades out of the news and we don't have to deal with something like this again. But people found this Twitter account at I am a soothsayer, posted in 2022 that 2023 Corona ended and 2026 hantavirus. And apparently Grok has confirmed that this post was actually posted in 2022. And so, you know, someone had foreknowledge of this, or they're just a soothsayer. But, you know, I tend to believe that these things are scripted and planned. Whether they're really happening or not is a whole nother question. But again, you know, there's also an election year. People are noting, seems to think these viruses outbreaks seem to happen more often in election years, potentially so that certain people that want to rig elections can institute mail-in ballots and have a rationale for that. And so, you know, we're seeing in some ways the Iran war is over, and now they're like, release the hantavirus. So we'll have to just watch that, and hopefully it fizzles. You know, this is one of the things that we hope is a nothing burger, as opposed to like the next story, which is the UFO disclosure. So let's see, I already talked about some of this in the beginning of the video, but it was like mainstream news prior to today when the actual article or when the actual document release came out, but that they were briefing pastors that this UFO news could be quite disruptive for religion itself. And so hopefully Christians are dealing with it like well so far. It's like, and let's see, here's the Trump tweet where he's saying, as for my promise to you, the Department of War has released the first tranche of UFO UAP files to the public for their review and study. Talking about like they're trying to provide maximum transparency. Related to alien and extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomenon, unidentified flying objects. Other administrations have failed to be transparent on this subject. People can decide for themselves what the hell is going on. Have fun and enjoy, President Donald J. Trump, and he links war.gov/UFO. So, you know, very interesting developments here. And like I said in the beginning, I kind of jumped the gun on this because this was like the main thing I was excited about, yet it turned into somewhat of a nothing burger. But these articles about how this relates to Christianity were saying that you're going to have people who are going to say that there are galaxies and there are allegedly other creations in other galaxies. And then therefore the whole creation story is a myth. And you're going to have people that are going to apostatize and turn from the Christian faith because they have no answer for what they're about to see and hear. So here's the other big one. Republican Representative Anna Paulina Luna has been saying some really interesting stuff about these aliens and the disclosure that's coming and what she has seen in private briefings. She's linked aliens to the Jewish book of Enoch and said it mentions aliens. The book was written 100 to 300 years before the birth of Christ. She has dubbed the aliens as interdimensional beings and said that the book of Enoch mentions 200 angels known as Watchers who arrived on Earth and mated with humans. Luna has also claimed that she has seen evidence of alien spacecraft. Have I seen a spaceship personally? She said. No. Have I seen evidence of this? Yes. Have I seen photo documentation of aircraft that I believe were not made by mankind? Yes. Is there significant historical significance to this? Yes. Luna told podcaster Joe Rogan last year. So the fact that we have Congress people speaking about this so openly, like essentially confirming these things that they've learned from classified hearings, is very significant. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that the White House had shared now a video of that part of these files. Just today, they shared a video of a craft changing direction in the sky, like just essentially a glowing sphere moving through the sky, pausing, going in the opposite direction, going 90-degree angles. And so like this is not the motion of any type of a luminous object that is like publicly acknowledged or disclosed henceforth. You know, certainly not an airplane. It doesn't have the motion of a helicopter. So it's like, what are they showing? And this is coming from the White House. So they're definitely dropping some hints to people that there is more out there, which of course, for myself and a lot of people in ufology and even in the conspiracy movement, it's like, duh. But it's really going mainstream. And I have one clip to play of Matt Gaetz speaking very openly about this and making some pretty shocking statements. And so let's go to that one clip. It's like Anna Paulina Luna and Matt Gaetz, I would say, are the two Congress people that I've heard the most direct and earth-shattering revelations from. And so let's hear what Matt Gaetz had to say.
Briefed me, who was in a military uniform, worked for the United States Army, that was briefing me on the locations of hybrid breeding programs where captured aliens were breeding with humans to create some hybrid race that could engage in intergalactic communication. Aliens that were living were in forced breeding programs with humans that had been abducted from war zones and from even the caravans of migrants.
All right. I mean, you know, I don't have the tinfoil hat on just yet, Congressman, but I'm wondering, you know, kind of how you react to that, because you are connected. You're on the UFO subcommittee. I mean, I'm just wondering what you make of that. Have you heard anything like that?
Well, I'm still a member of Congress, so I can't really comment too much on what Matt said. But I will say this.
Wait, seriously? Are you being serious, or is that tongue in cheek?
I'm being 100% serious. Okay. I've been 100% serious. I've been briefed by just about every alphabet agency there is. And I'll just tell you this. If they would release the things that I've seen, you would stay up. You'd be up at night worrying about or thinking about this stuff. We just need to disclose it all. I'm sick of it. Well, I was briefed. I'll just tell you this. I was briefed last week on an issue, or excuse me, 2 weeks ago. And it would have set the earth on. This country would have come unglued, I think, if they would have heard all that I heard. They would demand answers. And we need to. But, you know, it's never going to get, unfortunately, it just keeps getting covered up, and the people that know are dying or disappearing, as the case may be.
Wow.
And for the record, I'm not suicidal, and I don't take risks. So,
I'm glad you said that. I'm speechless, Congressman. We will have you back.
You should be. And I told the president, release it all. And the problem is the people that are around the president don't know and the president doesn't know the questions to ask. A few of us are going to have to get with the president and tell him what he needs to ask and where he needs to look. I mean, you know, we're in meetings and they give addresses and tell locations of items, I'll just say. And the public has a right to know, dadgummit. It's your tax dollars.
All right, so that ended up being more like half Matt Gaetz, half Tim Burchell, but both making very shocking statements, I would say. I mean, I don't remember another time in history when we have heard Congress people saying these types of things about UFOs and aliens. And I do see also progress in this that, in the first Trump presidency, it was all about the UAPs, the Tic Tac UFO, and the language has changed since then. They're really talking more about extraterrestrials, using the actual words extraterrestrials and aliens more. And so I even saw in one of the articles about the release today of the files, like the header picture was what looked like a body bag from Roswell, from like the Roswell incident. And so I think that was new. And so I mean, of course, it's a body bag. We don't know what's in it. But they're like easing this information in there, and it's becoming more and more mainstream, more and more official publicly. And so while of course we would like to see faster progress, it's those pesky Christians holding us back. No, I'm kidding, of course, but there is a lot of people that just dismiss this outright, or even like JD Vance saying, "Oh, they're just demons." Well, it's like, since when did demons drive advanced like aerospace vehicles? I've never heard of that before. So it's not like the classic type of demons that we're used to from Renaissance art. I think, with extraterrestrials, it's aliens and demons. It's like you call the evil ones, the evil, ugly ones can be called demons, and like the beautiful, helpful ones can be called angels. It's that simple, but so much controversy over it anyways. In one last story here, before we get to the Met Gala, there was a story about pedophile arrests, breaking that a Disney cruise ship had been seized and raided by ICE, and staffers are among the 28 arrested in a massive child rape and exploitation ring. So a lot of cruise boat news this week. All of it not good, and exposing what's really been going on. So let's talk a little bit about the Met Gala, which was Monday. It was controversial even among liberals because I believe this year was in some way like financed by or sponsored by Jeff Bezos. And, people have like decided to turn on him because he's like the 1% or 0.1% like billionaire class. But, of course, these are all leftists themselves at this event, and still many, many leftists who are less politically motivated still worship these celebrities. And so I don't have too many pictures from this. And actually, I had, I don't go out of my way to look at this nowadays, even though, I used to be in fashion. But just even scrolling on Twitter, like you see it regardless, and scrolling on Instagram, it's like it just floods everything when this happens. And out of all the looks that I saw from all the different celebrities, I thought that this dress on Nicki Minaj was actually like one of the most interesting. I mean, I like purple and blue tie-dye color. It's like, I like the three-dimensionality of it. I liked everything about it. Come to find out later in the week that Nicki Minaj was not even at the Met Gala, that this entire image was AI. Like, someone had generated both these AI images, and people were posting it on Twitter like she was there. And I fell for it at first. And there was obviously a lot of posts of who was actually there in their actual outfits. But then I did know that I saw a few posts where it was like clearly AI. And even I have to say, like, the post that I saw where it was like AI reimagining what different celebrities may have worn, like based on the theme, which was fashion is art. So it was like fashion inspired by fine art was the theme. The post that I saw that was AI was in general better than what I actually saw on the red carpet. So I'm not sure. Maybe my eye is out of date of like what's in vogue now, but I've continued following like almost everything, not quite as closely, since I've left fashion in New York since 2014. And I just found like the looks this year were disappointing. I mean, and the only other picture I have for the video here is Madonna, which I mean, she's basically just in like a black slip dress with like a big old hat. And she's standing there with Anthony Vaccarello, who is the current designer at YSL. I would not say he's like their best designer they've ever had at the brand. And Madonna just looks like drab, you know? It's like she had this big elaborate hat on that had like a boat attached to the top of the hat with this big veil with all these people holding the veil. And so people like did their research, and apparently this did come from art, and it was from this painting called The Temptation of St. Anthony, Fragment 2, a painting by surrealist artist Lenora Kerrigan. But the figure that Madonna is dressed as is actually represented as the devil in this painting. You see here like St. Anthony in white, and this devil figure in the background with a boat on its head and a bugle with like these handmaidens wearing different color dresses, like carrying, I mean, in the painting, it's almost like a huge gown, but Madonna changed it into like her veil or her like cloak. So she's literally dressed as like the devil from a painting, and like she looked like a total mess, like up close, like super old and wrinkled, and like didn't look happy to be there at all. Like just looked nervous and uncomfortable. I mean, I would be uncomfortable too. You remember when she had that big long cloak when she was performing was it like Living for Love with all the people with like devil horns, and she was walking like up the stage to the Grammys, and one of the backup dancers like stepped on her cloak and she fell backwards down the stairs. That was a pretty bad spill back there in like 2015. So I might be nervous too, having like that big cloak dragging behind me and relying on all those people to carry it. But it was just not a good look, you know. And I mean, to really cover this, I should have had more pictures from the event, but it's not even really worth looking at. You know, I thought Katy Perry had like the mask that like folded open, and just Kim Kardashian looked like a spray painted like a mannequin essentially with titty heart on. It was just like not the best display of fashion. And I'm not sure if it's because, you know, fashion designers are losing their creativity, or if they all just have such bad TDS they can't tell like what's good or bad anymore. But it's like we really expect more from the Met Gala. There was a couple dresses I liked. The one that was there was a dress that looked like it was made of all bubbles by Iris Van Harpen, I think, and actually blue bubbles. I thought that was a pretty cool one. I mean, it's kind of like, I'm not sure if it's like really goes with the theme of like fashion as art, because it's just a big bubble bath. But let's get to the good picture. Check this one out. If AI can do anything right, imagine if Trump had gone to the Met Gala dressed as the king. I mean, that would have been epic. I mean, just look at this picture. If you're only listening to the video, go look at this picture as Trump as the king. It looks amazing in red velvet and ermine fur trim. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the Met Gala. You know, I was disappointed to learn that my favorite look was AI generated. I retweeted some other looks on Twitter, but it's just a bunch of pompous celebrities, you know, just basically like laughing at the peasants and flaunting themselves like peacocks. And the last picture here is just Trump walking with a cigarette here, which I thought like had a lot of aura. So that is the news for this week. Covered a lot, and we'll have to see where this goes. Like I said, you know, like my main concern from before this election and still is the economy. It's like, it's the price of energy, it's the price of food, it's the cost of living. This is the main thing for Americans. Like, we don't necessarily care even as much about, like, let's get the cost of living right first and then deal with Iran. And if one of these libtard cities gets nuked by Iran before then, like, you know, write it off as a cost of doing business. So that's where I'm at. I'm just trying to survive here. And, you know, it would be nice to have like a little extra like spending money, but it's not the case right now. And it just seems to be getting worse. You know, it's like, I've even heard like with the airline fuel costs and everything, like we may be even coming up to an even bigger energy crisis. And I'm like, what are the white hats really planning here? Like, how hard are they going to put the screws to people? Like, clearly the screws were already put to David Wilcock a little bit too hard. And I think a lot of people are getting to that point where it's just like, what is the point? You know, we have a Democrat that ruins the economy. We elect like our dream Republican, and he's freaking ruining the economy too. And so despite BlackRock and JP Morgan like adding a few jobs, or possibly adding jobs for immigrants and blue collar workers, it's like the general state of the economy is definitely not good. And this is a worldwide phenomenon. It's not all Donald Trump's fault at all, I would say. But we got to get back on track, you know, go back to the original vision of the golden age. And of course, it's all tied into currency and inflation and the cost of oil. And so if we're energy independent, this should not be too much of a rocket science to get it back on track. But we definitely need to see the end of the Federal Reserve and stopping the printing of these dollars. It's like we're still seeing the Federal Reserve printing, deflating or inflating our currency. We're not in the state of hyperinflation quite yet, but it's like all of the funding seems to be going to the military industrial complex. So that's where we're at for New Templars. All I can say is hang in there, guys. Have faith. You know, it's felt like this pressure for a long time, I have to say. Like, it's not like is that much worse. Like under Biden, we knew it was bad, but we knew probably Trump was coming back. And so we were like, we just got to get through these 4 years. It's a little worse psychologically now because like Trump is back and it's still bad. However, still have that pesky Federal Reserve. And so when is Jerome Powell out yet or not? Like once Jerome Powell's out, let's get someone new in there. And 250, you know, we could see some big changes. You know, it's clearly some changes are coming down the pipe. And even with the UFO disclosures, like the more we get from the UFO disclosures, we may get disclosure of advanced propulsion, which will give us disclosure of advanced energy. Which, you know, call it free energy or not. If we have more advanced energy disclosed, that should definitely alleviate the fuel crisis and the cost of living crisis and the food crisis. And so it's like all these things are wrapped up in black programs and the international banking cartel. You know, I've shown in several videos in the past, like the Federal Reserve is all wrapped up in construction plastic. So there is clearly changes coming down the pipe, but when will they hit is the question. So just hang in there, keep rationing, and we'll see what the Maestro has cooked up for year 2 and beyond. Once again, dsmp.io to get all your disclosure needs met. These tools will help you in the Great Awakening. Awaken yourself and awaken others and spread the great news. And here's the energy map. You know, it all comes down to energy. Maybe that's why I'm wearing the energy cert tonight. It's like we shouldn't be dependent on fossil fuels still. But maybe we'll find something in those UFO files that will bring us into a new energy paradigm. So check out all that out on dsmp.io. Hang in there, and we'll see you guys on the next video. New Templars.
He could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think.
You've been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today.
Welcome to the future of finance.
Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people.
Comic book store.
What store is it?
You'll find out.